Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, June 7th. My name is Alan. I want to welcome you to my Spiritual Growth and Recovery podcast. The purpose of these videos is to grow my spirituality by following the AA program of recovery. And I try to do that by being as honest, vulnerable, and accountable as I can be, which is why I make these videos. It makes me put some work in. I'm no expert in AA or spirituality or recovery. I'm just trying to live life on life's terms and do it sober, right? Excuse me. So the recipe we follow here is we read the daily reading out of the AA Daily Reflections book. There is a link in the description if you'd like to follow along. That'll just share my, what I took from the reading and typically some other topic. All right, cool. So today the topic is going to be long-term hope and the idea of fear. Okay, so June 7th. Long-term hope. Since most of us are born with an abundance of natural desires, it isn't strange that we often let these far exceed their intended purpose. When they drive us blindly or willfully demand that they supply us with more satisfactions or pleasures than are possible or due us, that is the point at which we depart from the degree of perfection that God wishes for us here on earth. That is the measure of our character defects, or if you wish, our sins. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 65. This is where long-term hope is born and perspective is gained, both of the nature of my illness and the path of my recovery. The beauty of AA lies in knowing that my life, with God's help, will improve. The AA journey becomes richer and understanding becomes truth. The dreams become realities, and today becomes forever. As I step into the AA light, my heart fills with the presence of God. I think that was one of the best descriptions of sin or these defects I've ever heard. That's really good stuff. They're really good stuff. So, long-term hope. So this is an idea of step 6. It kind of explains why we're kind of messed up, kind of why we have all these, I guess, common character defects, right, that play out and cause all kinds of havoc for us in this world, right? So, we have these natural desires in which God intended for us to have, but we want more. We have the case of more, right? The moreisms. And so there was a time where I thought what I wanted or needed was reasonable. And then when I look back, like, why did I think that was due me? Why did I think that was justified to do that? And then that's kind of as we see that and go, oh, this is out of whack. Then that's kind of how I identify my character defects. And really, all these misuse of natural desires led to hurt and resentments from others. I think that's a really, really good description. At least for me, it is. All right, so the next part was talking about how they drove us blindly, or we willfully demanded. I can see in some areas I didn't know what I didn't know, so I'm just kind of going on autopilot, thinking, trying to satisfy needs. Really didn't know what was going on. But a lot of times where I demanded attention or no, stay away from me or whatever that is. That's when I'm holding on my will, and God's will has nothing to do with it. And it's this whole idea when it's all about me, that leads to separation from God. At least that's how I perceive it. So, then we talked about the long-term hope is that our lives, with God's help, will improve. Do I believe this? I can't say it's really manifested yet because there's still things I'm avoiding. But we will press on. I guess the last thing is just, as I step into the AA light, my heart fills with the presence of God. When I get out of the way, I open that channel for God to come in. Long-term hope. I do have a little bit of that today. Progress, not perfection, right? All right. So I do want to talk about fear. I have this list of just topics. Anytime something, kind of clicks in my brain, I put on my list of things to talk about. And fear is one that's been on the list for a while. I just felt like digging into it. And when I research topics, there's different sources, have different ideas, different ways of explaining things. So I'm going to talk about fears. I'm just going to talk about more of the irrational fears, because there's fears that are reasonable, right? We're put on this planet to survive, so there's fear is good for us to avoid dying or whatever, right? So what are fears? So when I looked into the description of fears, I found some interesting words in there, and I just thought it was. We'll talk about it, and then I'll share what I took from it. So, a fear, one definition, is an unpleasant emotion caused by belief that someone or something is dangerous. And then dangerous is the possibility of suffering harm or injury. So when I just broke that down, 2 words stuck out when I looked at the definitions. Belief and possibility. So Belief is something will happen, but doesn't mean it. We think it's going to happen, but won't necessarily will happen, right? It's not a guarantee. And possibility is something that may happen. So when I think about some of these fears, it's like I kind of rephrase it as an unpleasant feeling that something may happen, and if it does, it may be bad. So it's almost like a probability game. Yeah, things could go wrong, but what are the odds? And so assuming that something maybe has a 10, 20% chance of happening, I'm freaking out. I'm scared as shit. It's really not going to happen. And I can't count the number of times I've thought something was going to play out and it didn't. My track record's really poor. So how reasonable are these fears? And I think that's something worth evaluating. So just looking at different types of fears, there's rational fears. That's when there's a real imminent threat, a bear or a truck's going to fall on top of us. We flee, right? Or we fight. Now there's primal fears, which are ones like stay away from snakes, spiders. Those are ones that, if we don't have those, we'll, could die earlier than we need to. So, but I want to kind of dive in more of the irrational fears, the ones that don't make logical sense, or for me, the intensity is unreasonable. Now, the whole idea of something making logical sense, in those moments, it certainly makes logical sense, but gotta take ourselves out of the equation. So, when I looked at the biggest fears for me in recovery, I have living life sober, might be bored. Fail and relapse. The one success or failure one, that one I wrote down, even though it doesn't resonate, but I wonder if there's some kind of fear of success. Does that mean expectations? And I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about. I think the biggest one, fear, is I use and avoid. I stay busy so I don't have to feel certain things. I don't want to feel that stuff, and I'm still doing that today. I think the last fear I've written down is that all my core beliefs will show as true. Rejection, abandonment, no one cares, right? So if I just numb that shit out and avoid it, then I don't have to deal with it. But it will keep manifesting in some way. So where do these fears come from? Like I said, when I do some research, a lot of the lists don't feel like they apply to me, so I just get rid of them, For me, it's past incidents or traumas. It could be done to us or we caused by us, something that happened to us or something I did and there were consequences. A lot of us learn responses from early life, maybe reactions or responses to panic or fear. So if something happened to me when I was 5, 6, 8 years old, that may stick with me forever, even though the likelihood of those things happening again are low because of the circumstances, right? So say parents beat a child, doesn't mean everyone's going to physically violate me. So it doesn't mean it's true, but it's assuming things are going to happen because they've happened in the past, and that's not always reasonable, right? And it could come from some type of long-term stress, that kind of thing. But so how do these fears impact us if we don't face them? They can lead to being unproductive. Avoid, and then there's consequences to bailing on stuff, right? Fears will control me, and they keep popping up. And I'd rather address these on my terms than on its terms when it just comes up and I ain't ready. Every part of my life will be affected, and my growth will stunt. I'll get stuck, right? So how can I overcome these fears? I think one of the biggest keys is to voluntarily go, okay, I'm going to. And I've been dealing with this thing about this emotional neglect stuff a couple weeks. I'm not dealing with it. I'm unwilling to face it, and it's coming. It will not stop. So either I face it on my terms, or mostly my terms, or its terms. I got to admit to the fear, and I got to share that in some way, journaling with somebody, counselor, whatever it looks like. Just kind of share it and get a different perspective. Now, if the fears are reasonable, maybe I need to make some changes. But if they're not, I can still surrender. I can pray. Those kind of things. I need to avoid drugs, alcohol, or other addictions because I'm just running from it. It's going to chase me down. Can I see fears as an opportunity instead of something to dread? And I'd like to try that at some point. So the last thing I want to talk about was in AA there's a lot of acronyms for fear, and there's a couple that I really liked. So the one that's going, fear is being false evidence appears real. And I'll just kind of spin that back to the beginning where it's like, if this happens, this might happen, that could happen. Is it really that likely? And then we can either fuck everything and run, or we can face everything and rise. I like those acronyms, so I'll probably post those somewhere. Anyway, I hope you got something out of the reading today. just want to encourage you to, face whatever it is that comes your way. If you get some fears to deal with, find a way to work through them. Find the willingness to face them head on instead of when you just can't take it anymore. All right? Anyway, I hope your week is going well, and I'll be back tomorrow for another video. So until then, peace out.